Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis is a brand new, free-to-play sci-fi MMO by Sega that uniquely exists as both an expansion and its own standalone game experience. From this point forward, for simplicity's sake, I will refer to the original game as PSO2 and the new game/expansion as New Genesis. New Genesis features a completely new, more modern engine, incredible updated anime-inspired visuals, and revamped updated gameplay that still stays true to the original. As if all that wasn't enough, unlike PSO2's series of instance missions, New Genesis features an open world map complete with new elegant movement systems that aid in both combat and traversing the environment. One very cool feature is you can transfer characters back and forth between games, and a lot carries over, including any cosmetics you may have and your existing character customization. Don't worry though, as this doesn't include levels, XP, skills, photon arts, techniques, or currency, keeping it much more balanced, as New Genesis really is its own game, despite being connected. All footage here was recorded during the game's first closed beta test, so some things may be subject to change. Now with that out of the way, let's get into it. So starting out, character customization in this game is fantastic. You have a really wide range of options, and the character models look incredible, like they were ripped straight out of your favorite anime. This goes beyond just your face too, as you can layer cosmetics and accessories, meaning you can individually choose shirts, pants, outerwear, hats, masks, and more. There are 12 different slots for layering clothing and accessories, providing an absolutely crazy amount of options. Not only that, but because cosmetics from PSO2 cross over into New Genesis, there's over 8 years worth of cosmetics for you to collect, contributing to truly absurd levels of customization. There are 4 races. There's humans, Newmen, who are essentially magic space elves made from humans to be more magical, Caste, who are androids made as new bodies for people whose original bodies couldn't handle their enormous space magic aptitude, and Doomen, who are pale, edgy badasses with horns and cool anime eyes. Whatever your flavor may be, the game really gives you the tools to make your perfect avatar, or, let's be honest, for a lot of you, it gives you the tools to build your perfect battle waifu. As for combat, the combat in New Genesis is very similar to PSO2, but is revamped to be much more fluid while still keeping the things that made the original game's combat so great. New Genesis seriously has some of the best combat the MMO genre has to offer. It's fast-paced, incredibly fluid, and attacks all feel sufficiently impactful whether you're dishing them out or taking them. Dependent on your class, there's also a decent bit of strategy involved too, and you really have to pay attention to the enemies you're fighting in order to stay alive. This goes doubly so for melee classes such as Fighter or Hunter, the latter of which actually requires you to parry enemy attacks for powerful counterattacks that make up a large amount of your damage output, as well as negating all damage you would otherwise receive. Also, side note, I didn't get the chance to mess around with this much, but the game has this really cool system where if you find 2 weapons of the same quality but different types, you can combine them to make a multi-weapon. This allows you to use the skills of each weapon on the same bar. Whether you prefer a gun, sword, or magic gauntlets, this really opens up a lot of great options. My main critique of the combat is that the combat utilizes a tab target style lock-on system, which can sometimes feel awkward to use. If you're playing a range class, you can use a third-person shooter style mode that actually works really well, but for everyone else, you have to use this system to target specific weak points on larger enemies. Switching between weak points can feel really awkward sometimes, and depending on the boss's movements, your camera can get stuck in weird positions, making it hard to see what's going on. The same problem exists in PSO2, but is worse in New Genesis because fights tend to be a little more mobile. This gets much better once you learn how and when to lock and unlock, but it still feels a bit clunky at times. One of the largest concerns I have for the game right now is content. While the scope of the demo is limited, it seems like overall there may not be a whole lot of content available at launch. It seems as though a big chunk of the content will be running around doing various open world events. These could be anything from a boss fight to defending a truck that broke down, to ruthlessly slaughtering local wildlife, because who actually cares about the environment anyway? Look, I'm not saying I hate Mother Nature or anything. All I'm saying is that if the planet's gonna try and kill us all through global warming, we may as well try to kill it first, right? Anyway, the other content we have are these dungeons called Cacoons, which is actually how you acquire skill points, which I personally think is a really fun and creative way to earn these rather than just giving them to you when you level up. These Cacoons are really interesting and have various challenges. Some will be these really fun parkour races utilizing this game's fantastic movement systems, while others will have you fighting enhanced monsters within a given time limit, and others still are actually just a combination of both. While the content we have is all really fun and engaging, I'm worried about the amount of content. It seems like these cocoons are really only worth doing once for the skill points, so what we are left with is open world content, urgent quests, which we will discuss later, and world bosses. So there may not be a lot to do at launch, but we will just have to see when we get there. Speaking of world bosses, the world bosses in this game are massive, powerful, and awesome. You will find these behemoths out in the world, but be warned, to take some of these down, you're going to need a massive amount of help. For the boss that's on screen now, we had at least 12 people all fighting to take this monstrous foe down, and the fight took a total of 35 minutes. Now, of course, it wouldn't take quite so long with a larger amount of people, but regardless, these fights are crazy awesome and really intense. There's also a special, more powerful version of these that only spawn during certain weather conditions such as thunderstorms. I unfortunately wasn't able to get any footage of these, but one of them did spawn when a group of us was waiting for an urgent quest to start, and it completely destroyed us. The weather cleared up before I had a chance to hit record, but having special bosses that appear only under certain weather conditions is a really awesome feature to have, and I can't wait to get the opportunity to group up and hunt some of these down after launch. There's also these urgent quests where at set times of the day, every player gets a large red emergency alert and is directed to head to a specific area. Upon arriving there, you'll start matchmaking into a group for the event. In the beta, there was only one such event available, but it's really fun. You're matched up with 8 other players, and you have to take out this hulking mega boss aided by air vents that let you fly around the arena, and more specifically, fly up high enough to strike the boss's weak points. These urgents could either become a good thing or a bad thing at launch. See, in PSO2, while they are some of the most fun content in the game, they happen so frequently that you hardly have time to do anything else. But assuming they are all as well designed as we saw in the beta, and they're not too constant, these are a blast to play through. Next, let's talk about the big make or break for many players, the cash shop. There isn't any overtly pay-to-win elements, however anyone familiar with PSO2 will recognize that New Genesis has a similar monetization model. What this means is that the cash shop consists of loot boxes that contain cosmetic items. These cosmetics can be bought and sold amongst players, creating an indirect method of buying in-game currency with real-world currency, through buying cosmetic loot boxes and then selling what you get to other players. I won't defend this monetization system, as loot box mechanics and systems that allow you to trade real-world money for in-game currency are predatory and really shouldn't be accepted as they are. However, from my experience, in this game, it really won't give paying players nearly as much of an advantage as you'd think. From my experience, if you were to go out and work a decent job for an hour, then put that money into this game, you likely would get less if not the same return as someone who just played the game for an hour. The person who played for an hour, however, would also get materials, XP, and items to help their progression far more than what a paying player would get. Also, most of the people who sink a lot of money into these systems use most of what they get themselves. And, because of this system, a player who spends no money on the game, but more time, is able to acquire any cash shop items they could possibly want, and it's likely that a paying player will be selling them. There's also a lot you can't get with money, meaning regardless of how much you spend, you will still need to spend almost as much time playing as a non-paying player. Still though, the system can be considered as pay to win by some players, but for me personally, I don't mind the monetization model, assuming New Genesis follows the same model as PSO2, which it looks like it will. Next, I want to quickly mention the cooking system. Cooking in New Genesis is a more minor part of the game, but I really enjoy how it's handled. See, rather than having a set list of foods you can make, each ingredient carries its own stat buffs. Then, when you go to cook, you can actually pick and choose what ingredients to combine and how much you want to use, allowing you to really customize the perfect dish for your unique character, which is a really cool system, and I wish more games would include something like it. And last but certainly not least, my biggest issue with the game so far is performance. Even on my decently high-end rig, I could only run the game on medium graphics and would occasionally get steep lag spikes, especially when transitioning between open-world areas. This wasn't too horrible, and it may be fixed by launch, but I thought it worth mentioning as people with lower-end setups may struggle trying to run the game. Overall though, I would really recommend giving this game a shot. Despite some issues with sometimes wonky camera movement, potential lack of content, and poor performance, New Genesis actually exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways. With incredibly fun, well-designed combat, gorgeous anime-inspired visuals, and a truly crazy amount of character customization, this game is easily one of the best new MMOs to come out in a long time. That's just my thoughts though, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. If you like the video, remember to carve youtube.com/Mykah Maelstrom into a brick and yeet it through your neighbor's window, as that's what I've been doing in an attempt to grow my channel. Also, if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.